Right, chapter 11, last one for tonight, but it's quite a short one, so I thought I'd get this one done as well. Chapter 11, Blade on Blade. Winter dragged on, the sea freezing in the harbour, great dirty chunks of ice clunking against the thick pilings that held up the quayside. The days grew shorter, the nights longer and darker, and Gunnar sank to his lowest ebb. It was Thorkel who kept him going, Thorkel who sought him out and made him eat and give him his old sheepskin to wear when the cold bit even more deeply. Gunnar sometimes had the feeling he reminded Thorkel of somebody, and one day when they were in the crowded hall for supper, he asked who it might be. Rurik was talking to Orm, Gunnar standing behind Thorkel as he ate. "I had a son once," said Thorkel, "a fine boy who would have been about your age by now, had he lived. But he didn't, and neither did his mother. You've lost someone too, I can tell. Who was it? Mother? Father? Both?" "My father," Gunnar shrugged, unwilling to go into more detail. "Death casts a shadow over us all," said Thorkel, spooning up broth from a wooden bowl. "There isn't a man or woman in here who hasn't been touched by it, or been its servant. The secret is not to give in to it until you have to." "And when is that?" asked Gunnar. "When you stop breathing, and not before." "What about the Norns? Don't they decide our fate?" "What if they do? You don't know when they're going to cut your thread, so you should just carry on as if it's not going to happen. Otherwise, you might just as well have not bothered to be born in the first place." Rurik came over and sat down beside Thorkel. "A lot of people wish that about you, Thorkel. And why are you talking to the boy about fate and death? I'd rather you didn't make him any more miserable." "You're lucky I like you, Rurik," said Thorkel, shaking his head. "Starkad is right. That tongue of yours is sure to get you killed some day." "Well, one thing I'm sure of is that it won't be Starkad who'll do the killing," said Rurik. "Fetch me some more ale, Gunnar. There's a good lad." Gunnar filled Rurik's goblet with ale from the big barrel in one corner of the hall. Starkad was at another table, watching Rurik, his eyes glittering with hate. Ari was there beside him, as were half a dozen other men, Starkad's band of supporters. Rurik took the goblet from Gunnar and raised it in a mock toast to Starkad, who did the same back. Thorkel tutted, and Rurik turned to him. "You're such an old woman, Thorkel," he said. "What's wrong with a bit of healthy rivalry between men? Or should I say between a man and a fat boy?" "Let's hope it doesn't get unhealthy then," said Thorkel. "You know as well as I do where this kind of thing ends, Rurik. If I were you, I'd stay away from dark alleys. You might be the better warrior, but hatred leads to cunning." Rurik shrugged, and Gunnar suddenly realised the big man didn't care whether he lived or died. Gunnar understood that feeling now, and he guessed that it made a warrior like Rurik a very dangerous man to be around. The days passed slowly. Spring arrived at last with a warm wind from the south, and the iron ruts in Kaupang's alleys soon became the same old stinking mud. The sea ice melted, and the harbour grew busier. Trading ships appeared first, then the longships came, many of them bringing slaves for Orm, and his pens were soon full again. Gunnar was afraid to look into them sometimes, half expecting to see faces he recognised, people from his own steading. Then one morning he heard something that made his heart race. Rurik was in a black mood, and Gunnar was hanging around the quayside. He passed a longship where two men were mending sails, talking while they worked their needles. "I'd never seen anything like it," said one of them, a gingery man with a scrappy beard. "Mountains of ice that slide across the land and crush rocks to powder. Rivers of fire that burst out of giant cracks beneath your feet." "Sounds like a hard place to live," said the other, a dark, wiry man with several of his front teeth missing. "What did you say it was called?" "It's got a couple of names," said the first man. "The Land of Ice and Fire, or just Iceland. It's not that bad, though. There's good land to farm, too." So the Land of Ice and Fire did exist. Gunnar asked Thorkel about what he had heard, wishing he had done so before. Soon he knew it took a month by sea to get there, as the old man had said. From then on, Gunnar spent every spare moment on the quayside, wondering if he could stow away on a longship. A few days later, Rurik set off to the hall for supper with Gunnar as usual. The setting sun was a red ball, and night was starting to fill the town with darkness, but the air was still warm, and seagulls swooped and squawked above the roofs. After a while, Rurik and Gunnar came to a crossroads and stopped. 3 men blocked the way ahead, the sun outlining them with a fiery glow. It was Starkad, flanked on one side by Ari, and on the other by Hogni, their faces grim. Starkad and Ari were wearing chainmail and helmets. They carried shields and had drawn their swords. Hogni was also wearing chainmail, a rusty old byrnie with big, ragged holes in it that was far too short for him. He carried an old short-handled battle-axe, its blade a thick slab of black iron. "So, the moment has come," Rurik said, hand on his sword hilt. "Is it to be just you and me, Starkad, or do I have to kill your 2 puppies as well?" "You'll have to kill a whole pack, Rurik," said Starkad, a smile on his lips. "You don't seem to have many friends among the men of Orm's Hall." Gunnar looked round and drew in his breath. Starkad's supporters blocked each alley, 6 of Orm's hounds armed and ready for battle. But Rurik just laughed. "You call that lot men?" he snorted. "And where did you get that byrnie, Hogni? You should have stolen one that was a better fit." "You think you're so funny, Rurik, don't you?" said Hogni, his face dark with anger. "Well, you won't be laughing much after I've finished with you, and then I'm going to kill that slave boy of yours as slowly as I can." "You won't be killing anyone today," Rurik said quietly, slowly drawing his sword from the scabbard. "Give me some room, Gunnar." Suddenly, Ari rushed forward with a yell, wildly swinging his sword. Rurik simply stepped to one side, and Ari stumbled past, flailing. 2 more men moved forward, their swords raised, and Rurik parried huge blows from both, blade ringing on blade. Rurik soon killed one man, almost hacking his neck through, and wounded the other in the shoulder, forcing him to back off. "Come on then, Hogni," said Rurik, laughing. "What are you waiting for?" Hogni roared and came at him, his axe held high. Rurik's sword flashed, and Gunnar glimpsed a look of terror on the smith's face. Then Hogni was dead too. His body sprawled at Rurik's feet, his head split wide open. "What about you, Starkad?" said Rurik. "You haven't struck a blow yet, but then maybe you're a coward who watches while others do the fighting." Now Starkad stepped forward and rained blows on Rurik, who parried every strike. Starkad was soon gasping for breath, his face red with effort. "You'll have to do better than that," said Rurik, enjoying himself. Gunnar realised Ari was sneaking up behind Rurik. "Watch out, Rurik!" he yelled, and Rurik looked round. Starkad saw that Rurik was distracted and came in for the kill, but Rurik quickly turned back to deal with him, ramming his sword deep into his chest. Rurik pulled his blade free, and Starkad sank to his knees, looking surprised, then fell face down in the mud. Ari roared at the others, and they charged, shields overlapping, a wooden wave that crashed into Rurik and knocked him down. They held him on the ground as Ari stood over him, his sword pointed at Rurik's throat. "I could kill you here," Ari hissed, "but I think that pleasure should belong to someone else. Take him to Orm, and bring the boy." Ooh, that's the end. Short chapter. Dramatic. What's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen to Rurik, and what's going to happen to Gunnar? Who knows? Let me know what your thoughts are. Why do you think, something else that I noticed, why do you think birds keep appearing? There are always birds like watching and flapping. They've got to be important, haven't they? What do you think? What do you think about the birds? Ravens, magpies, seagulls. There's always birds. Loads of birds mentioned. I don't know. See you soon. Sleep tight. Don't let the COVID-19 bite.